Have you ever heard of a series of unsolved murders where the victims' first and last names started with the same letter, and their bodies were found in towns sharing those same initials?
It sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it?
It really does. But this was the terrifying reality of the alphabet murders that gripped Rochester, New York, back in the early 1970s.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, as we start digging into this, is how that detail, the matching initials, it just immediately grabs you. But, it's so important we don't let that overshadow the actual tragedy here. We're talking about the loss of 3 young lives.
Absolutely right. So between 1971 and 1973, Rochester became the setting for the disappearances and murders of 3 girls: Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkovich, and Michelle Medenza, all just 10 or 11 years old.
And it's crucial to remember as we go through this, these weren't just names, real kids. Their lives just violently cut short.
Now here's where it gets really unsettling. Each girl's first and last name started with the same letter.
Carmen Colon.
CC.
Wanda Walkovich.
Michelle Medenza.
Right.
But the eerie connections, they didn't stop there. Their bodies were found in or near towns whose names also started with that same letter.
So Churchville for Carmen.
Webster for Wanda.
And Macedon for Michelle.
Exactly. CWM.
This double initial thing, it's definitely what makes the alphabet murders stand out,
Wow.
and it's fueled so much speculation for, decades now.
Right.
Was it deliberate, a killer's signature, or just a truly, truly disturbing coincidence? It makes you ask, how do you even interpret patterns like that in crime?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore in this deep dive. We'll look at the heartbreaking details of each case, the similarities, yes, but also the really crucial differences. We'll talk about the suspects who came up over the years. Some might be familiar names, and those questions that just keep lingering around this whole unsolved mystery. Our mission here is really to sift through the info. We have news reports, historical accounts, police insights to try and understand what made this case so unique and why it's still such a chilling chapter for Rochester. Okay, so let's start maybe by focusing on the victims themselves.
What really strikes you immediately, I think, is just how vulnerable they were. Pre-adolescent girls, navigating the world with a child's trust. It makes it all the more heartbreaking.
Let's start with Carmen Colon. November 16th, 1971. 10-year-old Carmen disappears. She was just running an errand, picking up a prescription for her grandmother.
A simple errand.
Yeah. Last seen leaving the pharmacy on West Main Street. And she apparently told the owner kind of urgently, I gotta go.
That urgency, even then,
Yeah.
it hints maybe something wasn't right. Maybe her routine was disrupted somehow, made her need to leave fast.
Tragically, witnesses then saw her get into a car parked nearby. And then about 50 minutes later, multiple drivers on Interstate 490 saw something horrific. Carmen, partially naked, running from a dark-colored Ford Pinto hatchback that was reversing. She was frantically trying to flag down cars.
Oh, my God. Just imagine her terror. And the fact that nobody stopped. That's just,
Yeah.
It really hits hard, doesn't it? That bystander effect. Awful.
It's heartbreaking. At least one witness actually saw her being led back to the car.
Oh, no.
Her body was found 2 days later in a gully near Churchville, about 12 miles from where she was last seen. Partially nude, her coat was found in a culvert a ways off, and her trousers even later, near a service road. Any hope of finding her alive just vanished.
And the autopsy details. They just paint such a grim picture. Rape, fractured skull, vertebra, manual strangulation.
Yeah.
And those extensive fingernail scratches on her body. She clearly fought back. Desperately.
Understandably, there was just huge public outrage over the murder itself, obviously, but also the fact that people saw her trying to escape and just didn't help. Newspapers, local businesses, they offered a reward, ended up being over $6,000. Lots of suspects questioned, including her uncle, but no charges, ever.
Yeah. That investigation was actually the first unsolved homicide in Monroe County in over 5 years. So it shows you the challenges they faced right from the start.
Those early hurdles, they really show how complex these things get when you don't have immediate leads. It must have had such a chilling effect.
Definitely.
And adding another layer of just sadness, there were reports Carmen had been having recurring nightmares before she was abducted. Makes you wonder, was that a sign of something, some distress? Maybe even related to what happened?
It's possible, yeah. Hard to know.
They even put up billboards with her picture.
Wow.
Do you know who killed Carmen Cullen? So stark. But nothing useful came from them.
Those public appeals, they show the desire for justice, but yeah, often highlight the frustration when investigators just don't have solid leads to work with. Community wants to help, but needs info.
So fast forward 17 months. The terror returns. April 2nd, 1973. 11-year-old Wanda Walkovich disappears. Around 5 p.m., she was just walking home after buying groceries on Conkey Avenue. Last seen, leaving the deli around 5:5.
Yeah.
It's that same disturbing pattern, isn't it? Young girl, routine errand, daylight, gone.
Yeah, you see that pattern of kids just doing everyday things, making them seem like accessible targets. It's really unsettling. Common in crimes against children, sadly.
Classmates saw her struggling with her groceries. She even rested the bag against a fence for a second, and they noticed a brown vehicle drive past right then.
Okay.
Her body was found the next day, fully clothed this time, at the base of a hillside in Webster, about 7 miles from Rochester. The way her body was positioned, it suggested the horrifying idea she might have been thrown from a moving car.
So fully clothed, that's different from Carmen.
Right.
But the autopsy, another horrifying similarity, sexual assault. And ligature strangulation this time, likely with a bolt. Also defensive wounds, so she fought back too. And chillingly, signs she was redressed after she died.
Oh, that's awful. Investigators found traces of semen, pubic hair, and here's something particularly eerie. Several strands of white cat fur on her clothes.
White cat fur?
Yeah, but her family didn't own a white cat.
Okay, that's weird. A detail that might connect things later.
Potentially. Again, an anonymous hotline. A $10,000 reward offered, hoping for leads.
That cat hair detail definitely stands out. It makes you wonder where it came from, right? Could it point to a place or even a person?
There was an eyewitness who reported seeing Wanda talking to the driver of a large brown vehicle around the time she disappeared. And another witness reported seeing a man forcing a red-haired girl into a light-colored Dodge Dart.
Okay, so conflicting descriptions there.
Yeah.
A bit.
Yeah. And interestingly, despite these reports and the similarities in age and location, police initially dismissed a direct link to Carmen Colon's murder.
Well, in those early stages, they often focus on each case individually, right? Recognizing bigger patterns can take time, more evidence.
True. And even more unsettling, Wanda's stomach contents showed she'd eaten custard.
Custard?
Yeah, which her family said she never ate.
Huh. So that suggests maybe an interaction with her abductor before she died? Like trying to gain trust? Or keep her quiet?
It's possible.
Yeah.
A televised reconstruction of her abduction was done, hoping to jog memories, but sadly, no useful leads came from it.
That custard detail is quite poignant, isn't it? Hints at maybe control or even a seemingly harmless gesture before the horror.
Then just 7 months later, it happens again. November 26, 1973. 11-year-old Michelle Mienza reported missing. Evening time. Failed to return home from school.
Oh, no.
Last seen by classmates around 3:20 p.m. She was walking towards a shopping plaza, apparently to get her mom's purse she'd left there. Again, just a normal after-school thing gone wrong.
That repeated vulnerability during routine activities, it really highlights the predatory nature, doesn't it? Suggests someone watching, maybe. Looking for opportunities in kids' everyday lives.
A witness reported seeing her in the passenger seat of a beige or tan car going fast down Ackerman Street. And according to this witness, Michelle was weeping.
Oh, heartbreaking.
Then around 5:30 p.m., another motorist saw something very suspicious in Walworth. A man with a large beige or tan car, flat tire. And he was holding a girl believed to be Michelle by the wrist.
Holding her by the wrist, okay.
Yeah, and the man acted really suspiciously. Prevented the motorist from helping or even getting a look at the license plate.
Wow. That's a really chilling account. A direct sighting, potentially, of the abductor with her. And his behavior definitely raised red flags.
You bet. Michelle's body was found 2 days later, November 28th, in a ditch in Macedon, about 15 miles from Rochester. Fully clothed, face down.
Okay.
Autopsy showed extensive blunt force trauma, rape, and ligature strangulation again, possibly with a thin rope.
Blunt force trauma, that's another difference compared to the first two, isn't it?
It is. The variation. Manual strangulation for Cullen, ligature for Walkovich and Mienza. Now blunt force trauma added for Mienza. Could it be one killer evolving? Or maybe more than one person involved?
That's a key question investigators would have wrestled with.
And just like with Wanda, numerous strands of white cat fur found on Michelle's clothing.
There it is again, the cat fur.
Yeah. And a poignant detail. Leaf samples matching the discovery spot were found clutched in her hand, suggesting she was probably killed right there.
Wow. That links her directly to the scene.
Investigators got a partial palm print from her neck, traces of semen. Analysis indicated rape by one person. And her stomach contents. Hamburger and onions. Eaten about an hour before death, her family confirmed.
That last meal detail, it lines up with witness reports maybe. Helps create a timeline of her final hours.
Exactly. Witnesses also reported seeing a girl matching Michelle's description with a man. Caucasian, 25-35, about 6 feet tall, 165 pounds. Saw them at a fast food place in Penfield around 4:30 p.m. and later near Route 350.
Okay, so multiple sightings.
Yeah. Based on those, a composite drawing of the man was released. Police set up a dedicated hotline. And by now, they were strongly suspecting a single perpetrator might be responsible for all 3 murders.
Right. That composite sketch, the growing suspicion of one killer, that marks a real shift in the investigation, pooling all the info together.
So when you look at these 3 awful crimes, the similarities are, well, they're undeniably striking, aren't they? It goes way beyond just the alphabetical thing.
Absolutely. You lay the details out side by side, and these disturbing parallels just jump out at you. You can't easily dismiss them.
All 3 were young girls, predolescent, disappeared from Rochester early afternoon. And interestingly, on rainy days, bodies all found in nearby towns easy to get to by car, often near expressways.
Yeah.
Each body looked like it had been thrown from or carried from a vehicle.
And tragically, all 3 were described by people who knew them as being maybe a bit lonely or outcasts, which cruelly might have made them seem like easier targets.
They were all raped, all strangled.
Oh, right.
For Wanda and Michelle, there was that unsettling detail. Eating unusual food shortly before death, and their bodies being redressed afterwards.
Yeah, and that white cat hair found on both Wanda and Michelle. That's such a persistent, unsettling detail.
It really is. And of course, the geography. The locations matching the first letter of their names.
Yep.
Churchville, Webster, Macedon, CWM.
And beyond the crime details, even some similarities in their backgrounds, right? Poor Catholic families, maybe some experiences with bullying or struggling in school.
Yeah.
These shared vulnerabilities, it might suggest a killer looking for a specific type of victim profile.
But despite all those chilling similarities, there were important differences too, weren't there?
Definitely.
Like Carmen's public interaction before the abduction, that attempted escape. That's quite different. And the strangulation method manual for Carmen, ligature for the others. Plus that brutal blunt force trauma on Michelle, not seen in the other 2.
Right. Those variations. They lead us straight into the long, really complex list of suspects investigated over the years.
Yeah, and it's important to realize, in cases like this, these high-profile, long unsolved ones, lots of people come under suspicion. The real challenge is finding that concrete, irrefutable evidence.
Exactly, sifting through it all.
One of the earliest and maybe most intensely looked at suspects was Miguel Colon, Carmen's uncle.
Okay.
He'd started a relationship with Carmen's mother after her parents split up. And on the day Carmen disappeared, she went to the pharmacy alone. Usually her grandfather went with her.
That change in routine, investigators always look closely at things like that. Any deviation can hold clues, right? Potential interactions, vulnerabilities.
Right. And just before Carmen's abduction, Miguel Colon bought a car. It matched the description witnesses gave of the car on I-490 during her escape attempt. When police searched his car, they found the interior, and specifically the trunk, had been cleaned extensively. The trunk was washed with strong detergent. The dealership confirmed they hadn't done that.
Okay, that's a big red flag, isn't it? That kind of meticulous cleaning, especially the trunk, suggests trying to remove evidence.
Definitely. And even more disturbing, Carmen's doll was found in his car. Though relatives did say she often rode with him, so maybe not conclusive on its own. But then, just 2 days after Carmen died, he allegedly told a friend he was leaving the country, said he'd done something wrong in Rochester.
Wow.
And he did. Fled to Puerto Rico just 4 days after the murder.
That sudden flight plus that vague, incriminating statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would absolutely put him high on the list for police.
He tried to dodge authorities in San Juan, but eventually surrendered, got extradited back to Rochester for questioning.
Right.
But despite all that circumstantial evidence, the car, the cleaning, the flight, the statement, even not having a solid alibi, no direct physical evidence ever linked him to Carmen's murder.
Yeah.
He died by suicide in 1991.
That lack of physical evidence, that's critical. The suspicion was strong, the circumstantial case looked compelling, but without that direct link, prosecution is almost impossible.
Exactly. So another major suspect who came under scrutiny, Dennis
Ah, the garage rapist.
Yes, a Rochester firefighter. known for, I think, at least 14 rapes of teenage girls and young women between 71 and 73, same period as the Alphabet murders.
Right. His pattern of targeting young females, same time, same area, definitely made him a person of high interest.
He owned a beige vehicle, similar to descriptions in the Alphabet cases,
Yep.
and he lived close to where Michelle Masenza was last seen.
Okay.
And then in a really chilling turn, he tried another abduction in January 74, just weeks after Michelle's murder. Died by suicide during the police pursuit.
I don't remember that.
After his death, they examined his car and found white cat fur.
White cat fur, there it is again. That's compelling, isn't it? Given it was on Wanda Michelle.
Hugely compelling. It significantly strengthened the suspicion around him, especially for the Walkovich and Mainza murders, however. Big, however. DNA from the semen found on Wanda Walkovich was tested in 2007.
Okay.
Dennis Termini was definitively excluded. Not a match.
Ah, okay. That's significant.
Very. Unfortunately, no physical evidence from Carmen or Michelle was still suitable for comparison by then. Lost or degraded.
So the negative DNA result for Wanda's case, it really weakens the theory of Termini being the sole killer for all three, doesn't it? It doesn't rule him out completely for the others where there's no evidence left, but complicates the picture.
Absolutely. Okay, then there's Kenneth Bianchi.
The Hillside Strangler.
Yep. Later infamous in L.A., but during the Alphabet murders, he lived and worked in Rochester as an ice cream vendor.
An ice cream vendor.
Yeah, and some of his routes were near where Carmen and Wanda disappeared. He also worked as a security guard, an ambulance driver.
So jobs that gave him potential contact with kids, and the fact he later became a notorious serial killer. Yeah, that would definitely raise eyebrows about Rochester.
For sure. He moved to L.A. in '76, eventually convicted for the Hillside Strangler murders. He always denied any involvement in the Alphabet murders, but it was noted he drove a car similar in color and model to one seen near an abduction site.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the evidence linking him, just fragmentary, circumstantial.
Right. The timeline, his later crimes, they're suggestive, sure.
Right.
But without more concrete evidence connecting him to Rochester specifically, he's just another possible but unproven suspect.
Exactly. And finally, we should talk about Joseph Nasso.
Nasso, right, the California Alphabet murderer.
Arrested in 2011. Murders of 4 women in California, 77 to 94. And the really disturbing link. All his known California victims were believed to be prostitutes who share the same first and last initials.
Wow. That's an eerie parallel to Rochester, isn't it? The shared initials thing.
Incredibly eerie. Nasso was a New York native, lived in Rochester during the early 70s when the Alphabet murders happened, travels between NY and California.
So he was there at the right time, and his later MO involved the initials.
Yeah, he had to be a significant person of interest.
He definitely was. And get this, one of his California victims was also named Carmen Colon.
No way, another Carmen Colon.
Yeah, unbelievably chilling. But despite all these disturbing similarities, DNA testing again, Nasso's DNA did not match the semen from Wanda Walkovich.
Another DNA exclusion, okay.
Right. He was convicted, sentenced to death for the California murders in 2013. During that investigation, they found his journal, chillingly detailed his murders. And apparently back in the 80s, managing a hotel in San Francisco, he kept these horrific notebooks, plans to torture and murder a woman living above him.
Just awful.
So the parallels in the initials pattern, his presence in Rochester, it's compelling. But the DNA exclusion for Wanda is a major hurdle. Plus, his known California victims were adult prostitutes, not young girls like in Rochester. Maybe a different pattern. That DNA exclusion for Nasso, despite the initials link and him being in Rochester, it's another powerful reminder, isn't it? How crucial that hard forensic evidence is.
It really is. It's almost unbelievable.
Nice.
Over 800 potential suspects questioned over the years.
800. Wow.
Yeah. And
Okay.
still, no one ever charged in all 3 cases. One theory that came up suggested the killer might have worked for or known about social service agencies. Given the victims' backgrounds, maybe their vulnerabilities.
That's a chilling thought. Abuse of trust, maybe. But it's speculative, right? No direct evidence for that.
No. And it's important to note, most investigators now, both back then and currently, lean towards the double initials being, well, a tragic coincidence.
That coincidence, really?
Yeah, the thinking is trying to deliberately pick victims based on initials. That would actually increase the risk of getting noticed. Too much targeted stalking needed in one area.
That's a really crucial point. While the pattern is so striking, statistically, weird coincidences do happen, even horrifying ones. Focusing only on that pattern could mislead you.
Right. Some investigators also thought maybe Carmen Collins' murder was by someone she knew. possibly a relative. Given how she first encountered the abductor, apparently went willingly at first, being led back to the car.
That detail about her being led back, it does raise that unsettling idea she might have known the person or at least didn't see them as a threat initially.
And then complicating things even more, former FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood. He suggested maybe there were two separate offenders.
Two killers, why?
Based on the differences in Carmen's murder compared to the other two. He cited, like, the higher level of anger, the manual strangulation, no pre-death feeding, different from Wanda and Michelle.
That's a compelling theory. Two killers. It would explain some discrepancies, wouldn't it? But it would make the investigation even more complicated over the years.
Massively. Yeah. There was that partial license plate from the witness in Michelle Menendez's case.
Right, the guy with the flat tire.
Yeah. It led to a suspect with a matching car, but he had an alibi, passed a polygraph. Cleared.
Ah, another dead end.
Yep. And tragically, the only physical evidence left now, with any potential for more testing, is that semen sample from Wanda Walkovich. Evidence from Carmen and Michelle, lost or destroyed over time. Old evidence handling, you know.
That's such a huge setback for modern forensics, isn't it? Losing that evidence limits the chances for breakthroughs. That sample from Wanda is now pretty much everything, forensically speaking.
Pretty much. But despite all the dead ends, the police did renew efforts in 2009. Newspaper articles revisiting the cases. They got some new leads from the public.
Anything come of them?
Sadly, no arrests. But police say they're still committed. And now, they're actively considering genetic genealogy. Yeah. Using that remaining DNA from Wanda.
Ah, genetic genealogy. That offers real hope in cold cases like this, doesn't it? Tracing DNA through public databases to find relatives. Maybe identify suspects they never knew about.
Exactly. It could be the key. The impact of these murders on Rochester, though, it was just immense. Lasting.
I can only imagine.
Intense public outrage, huge media coverage after each murder, created this atmosphere of fear, uncertainty. The funerals for all three girls were at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Rochester. Moments of collective grief. And in 1995, Carmen Cullen's mother made this heartbreaking public statement. Talked about the lifelong pain, her unwavering desire for justice for her daughter.
Those personal stories. They just remind you of the profound damage these unsolved crimes cause to the families, the whole community.
Yeah. And the case still holds public fascination. It inspired a movie in 2008, The Alphabet Killer. Several books written about it. Discovery Channel did an episode back in 2001.
It shows how these perplexing cases, especially with vulnerable victims and those bizarre details like the initials, just stay in the public consciousness, doesn't it?
It really does. The continued media attention, it also reminds us these are still unresolved. People still want answers, accountability. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap the core elements. 3 young victims, Carmen Cullen, Wanda Walkovich, Michelle Minza. Same first and last initials. Bodies found in towns, starting with the same letter. Churchville, Webster, Macedon.
Chilling parallels.
Disturbing similarities in the crimes, yes, but also key differences in abduction details, causes of death, and a long list of suspects' family, local offenders, even notorious serial killers investigated, but none definitively linked to all 3.
And those lingering questions, they're still so unsettling, aren't they? Was that alphabetical link deliberate? A killer's signature? Or just a horrifying coincidence?
Yeah.
Was it one person? Or maybe multiple killers? And that haunting question, why didn't anyone stop to help Carmen Cullen on the highway?
It's still such an open, painful chapter for Rochester and Western New York.
Sure.
The fear back then. A dark time. And the search for justice for Carmen, Wanda, and Michelle, it continues. Their stories are just this poignant, tragic reminder.
It really underscores the complexity of unsolved violent crime, the enduring pain, but also, the hope that comes with advancing science, new techniques, maybe offering closure even after all this time.
Yeah. So consider this. In today's hyper-connected world, with forensic science evolving constantly, could the key to unlocking this whole decades-old mystery be lying dormant somewhere in overlooked details, future breakthroughs we can't even imagine yet? What if some tiny piece of information, forgotten, dismissed, actually holds the answer?
It's possible.
The alphabet might have linked these victims in tragedy, right? But maybe a deeper, more persistent dive into memory and evidence into new science. Maybe that can finally spell out the truth and bring some peace to a community that's waited way too long.